There are a number of useful properties of the Tablix data region that you may need to adjust from time to time. And most of the high-level Tablix properties are handily contained within a Tablix Properties dialog box. The hardest part to changing these properties is figuring out how to get to the dialog box, since the option to open it doesn't always seem to be available where you might expect it, particularly if you select or right-click the wrong thing. But once you know where it is, it's an easy thing to access. To open the dialog box, select any part of the Tablix so that the row and column handles appear. Then right-click any of the handles and you'll see Tablix Properties, and that opens up the dialog box. On the General tab of the Tablix Properties dialog box, you can perform a number of tasks, including setting the name of the region, associating a different data set with the region, and adding page breaks before or after the region, as well as control the behavior of row and column headers. The Visibility page lets you control when the Tablix is visible on the report, which is handy for online versions of the report rather than printed copies. You can initially show the report, which is the default, or hide it, or base its visibility on an expression. You can also add some interactivity by clicking the Display can be toggled by this report item option and selecting an element on the report to control that. So there's a lot of options for how or whether the Tablix is initially displayed. Then there's the Filters page. After you click this Add button here, it lets you filter the rows of the data set that's attached to the Tablix. You usually want to perform most filtering in the database by including a where clause in the dataset query. But you can also filter the records in the report itself, which is handy if you create a parameterized report and base the filtering on one or more parameter values. You can base the filtering on any two expressions, which gives you a lot of flexibility, perhaps more than you can perform in the dataset query. And you can include as many filtering conditions as you want. And by the way, this is a common button for the expression editor. If I click that, it opens it up, and I can write an expression in order to define the filtering. And I also have choices for the operator, equal, not equal to, like, and so forth, top in, and all. Some very powerful filtering capabilities. So, in fact, you can filter both within the query that creates the data set for the report, and then further filter the records when you execute the report. All right, then you can also sort the records within the data set differently than they're sorted in the database using an item here on the sorting page. So I clicked Add, and now I can select a field to sort on. And I can also write an expression for it and sort them from A to Z or Z to A, which of course just corresponds to ascending or descending order. Okay, so that's the Tablix Properties dialog box. There are other ways to get to it. For example, if you select the Tablix, so I'll click the upper corner there, and then go to the Properties window, I can open it, then I can select the Filters property here, and click on the button there, and it opens up the Tablix Properties dialog box and goes directly to the Filters page right there. And then the same behavior applies to the Sort Expressions property. That will take me directly to the sorting page. By the way, as long as I brought up filters and sort expressions, this has a little bit different behavior. This ellipsis button here has a different behavior as most properties with ellipsis buttons in Visual Studio. If you create any filters or sort expressions, they won't appear as a value here. And again, that applies to both filters and down here, sort expressions. To view the existing filters or sort expressions, you'll have to go back to the Tablix Properties dialog box. This probably really isn't a very big problem, since it would be hard to display much useful information in this small, single-celled space that's available within the Properties window. Okay, so the Tablix Properties dialog box is well worth exploring in order to see the effects that the various settings can have on the final report rendering. A situation that you'll often need to allow for in report design is the possibility that the data set returns no rows. This may be because the database doesn't return any data from the dataset query. Maybe because the report's based on the current quarter's data, and today's the first day of the quarter. and there just is no data yet. Or maybe because a filter you set up for the report is overly restrictive, and none of the records from the dataset query make it through the filter. Whatever the reason, it'd be nice to display something that explicitly indicates that there's no data rather than just producing an empty report. Empty reports make users nervous. The Tablix handles this situation quite nicely. So I have the Tablix selected. I go over to the Properties window here, and you can see that there's this No Rows section category here. Okay? So it extends all the way from here to here. So there's a number of properties that you can use. The most important one is the No Rows message property. You simply add the text you want to display when there's no data available for the report, and it'll appear instead of an empty Tablix. The other properties within this No Rows section let you format the message as it appears within the report. So you have a lot of options for how you configure this. And this is one area where it's better to look at the Properties window categorized, because otherwise all of these properties are scattered throughout the alphabetical list, and you won't necessarily know that this format property is associated with No Rows. Another handy Tablix option is the ability to include columns to the left of the row group headers. By default, a Tablix displays the row group headers in the leftmost column, but you can change that behavior using the Groups Before Row Headers property. And that's a property of the Tablix itself. The value of the property is the number of columns to display to the left of the row group headers. Now, one word of caution. This option only works if the row headers really are row group headers. It won't work for static columns. This is a handy option when you're displaying several months' worth of data. Rather than have the row group headers on the left side of the report, you can display them in the middle with equal numbers of columns on either side. Say one quarter on the left and the following quarter on the right. This makes it easier to compare the two sets of columns, as well as saving the user from scanning the full width of the report to determine what a number in the row represents. It's a small thing, but it's another way that you can make reports more easily usable for users. One of the many nice features of reporting services has long been the ability to nest various report items within one another. It even lets you nest groups within groups, which lets you create some very complex, compelling, and very attractive reports relatively easily. But there's long been a fairly nasty problem when you nest groups. Here's a report that demonstrates the problem. I'll go straight to a preview there. And there you can see the alignment of the columns. Now this report uses a query against the AdventureWorks DW 2012 database's Fact Internet Sales Table in order to return sales amounts by month and year. The problem is that the Tablix that displays the monthly sales is nested within another Tablix that displays the years. Because not all the years have data for the same months, the monthly sales figures don't line up vertically, making it hard for the user to visually scan the table for trends in sales over the years. So you can there see in 2005, you have July, August, September, October, November, December, but 2006 and 2007 have all 12 months. If I scroll over here to the right, you can see that it does have December there. And then 2008 only goes up to July, and so it displays there, but it's cut off. So you can't really scan down and compare month to month. All right, so I'll go back over to the design. So remember that this report has two Tablixes. I'll select the outer Tablix here. So this is the outer group, and it's grouped by calendar year, as you can see down here. So that displays each year's data. And this Tablix is called the Year Tablix. So I can go over here to Properties and see that the name is Year Tablix. And then there's an internal Tablix. So I'll select that right there. So this is embedded within the Year Tablix. Go over here to Properties, and you can see that that's called the Month Tablix. This is the data region that displays the monthly sales for each year. And therein lies the problem. Each row of monthly sales data is essentially isolated from the other rows. So when the report renders the row for 2005, all it knows is that it has data for July through December, and couldn't care less, if I can anthropomorphize here, what columns its sibling rows have. Similarly, the 2008 data only displays columns for January through July. Now, as with other shortcomings in earlier versions of reporting services, report developers came up with kludges over the years to get around this problem. But they were generally quite convoluted to implement. Some of them were pretty ugly. Clever, but ugly. Now, in the SQL Server 2008 R2 release of reporting services, Microsoft introduced the domain scope property of a group to get around this problem rather elegantly. And they've carried this forward to SQL Server 2012 and SQL Server 2014. All you need to do is set this property on the nested item, assigning the value of the property the name of the container. So in this case, I want to set the domain scope of the English month name group, which is right down here. That's the name of the field within the database. That's the object that I want to set the property for. And I specifically want to set it to year Tablix. So I'll select that, go over here to Properties, and within this Group section, expand that, and I have the domain scope. Notice that there's no list or anything, so I need to type in the name. So it needs to be year Tablix. So that one change to the report is all that I need to do to bring the data into alignment. I'll come back over here, preview the report again, it'll go out, re-render the report, and now you can see that January is stacked on top of January, February, March, April, and so forth. And if I come over here, now the last year has empty cells for the missing data. And so now I can easily see that for December I have data for 3 years, but I'm missing the data for the last year. Maybe I'm running this report in July or August of, 2008. Now, one thing you should think about doing is that anytime you reference a report item in a property like this, you should give the objects meaningful names. Now, if I had left the default names of the Tablixes, then Tablix 1 and Tablix 5, it increments the number, and I had a few false starts when I created the report. So I have Tablix 1 and Tablix 5. It would have been more confusing to determine which Tablix name to assign to domain scope. But in this case, I know that the year Tablix contains the month Tablix, and the month Tablix has the alignment problem. So domain scope had to be set to year Tablix, the container. Simple in that case. Now it's important to understand that domain scope is a property of the English month name column group in the Tablix, not of the Tablix itself. Remembering this can save you a lot of time looking for a property when you need to use it.